This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Sherapy.
Hi, welcome to Sherapy, Real Therapy with Sherry Amatenstein. I am a New York City-based psychotherapist and author who has written 3 relationship self-help books. An episode of Sherapy is usually a 50-minute therapy session. The aim is to demystify and destigmatize psychotherapy. Too many people in emotional distress still suffer silently, and these days, obviously, there's a lot of emotional distress out there. But today's Sherapy is a conversation with a few couples on the impact that COVID has had on their relationships, the good, the bad, the ugly. In Wuhan, the ground zero of the pandemic, the stress of being quarantined together led to an uptick in divorce rates. And divorce and domestic violence rates around the globe has risen by approximately 20%. But this total upheaval in nearly every aspect of our lives can also provide an opportunity for couples to come to see one another with fresh eyes. That's certainly what happened in my case. In mid-February, I was diagnosed with early stage breast cancer. COVID came to New York a month later. I had surgery followed by 8 rounds of chemotherapy, which made me immunocompromised, which meant that I had to isolate, which meant that my partner, Paul, had to do pretty much everything for me because I couldn't go outside. I am now doing radiation, which is less toxic. So I'm sort of living what passes for more of a normal life these days. I'm going out, while masked, wearing a beanie on my head. But Paul continues to be totally rock solid, loving, always wanting to do whatever he can for me. He's a constant that I know I'll always be able to count on. And COVID has really helped me appreciate him so much more than I did before. And he says that he appreciates me even more so. And I mean, I believe him. I have no reason not to. And I guess seeing your partner go through all of what I've had to go through is a real test, and COVID added to the test, and it's been an amazing experience, I think, and had all in all a really good impact on the relationship, though I know it's something that none of us would rather have had to go through. But as long as you do have to go through something, it's really good to face those obstacles.
Hello, you
Okay?
all. I'm sorry that I'm late.
That's okay, Christina.
Sorry about
That's
that.
okay. But we're recording now, so I'm going to be having you on, but a little bit later. But I'm glad you're here. Okay.
Sure.
I was actually just about to introduce the first couple, and you just got a preview from the third couple. So I'm going to introduce my first guests. Janan and Saif are 29 and 34 respectively, and they've been married for 3 years. They have a toddler, and they had just bought a house in the Jersey suburbs when COVID came to town. So Saif, was traveling constantly for work prior, and now all of a sudden he was homebound. Janan had just given notice to her employer, and she was about to start a new job. But because of COVID, her new boss had bad news. The start date was going to be delayed. So Janan and Saif are now living together 24/7 in their new home and raising their little one with no childcare. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
No, happy that you're here and that you can share your experience. So what was it like to have your lives totally upended? Jan, suddenly you were a stay-at-home mom. Safe, your high-flying lifestyle was grounded. I know that. And until Janan finally started her job remotely, you were the sole breadwinner. So How did you make these adjustments without killing each other?
You're going to hear our toddler screaming in the background. So it's a nice little preview to our life. I have always worked from a very young age. So having those 3 months of unemployment where I got to just be a stay-at-home mom was definitely a weird transition. But at the same time, kind of a nice experience. I tried to see, I tried to make the best of it. I was home. I was able to focus on my son and be there for all of his exciting milestones that I would have otherwise missed if I was in the office, or, if I was working even from home, I would have not been able to focus on him and take part in that excitement. So it was definitely a weird transition. And, not being able to really contribute to our household income, which is something that I've always done and I have always planned to do. Sorry if you hear his walker in the background.
Day in the life, right?
Yeah, welcome. It was definitely a weird feeling. I almost kind of felt like, and this is totally my own, my own feeling. My husband did not make me feel this way at all. But I almost felt like our household income wasn't mine anymore because I wasn't contributing to it the way that I was accustomed to.
Right.
So I didn't feel, comfortable spending a certain amount of money that I, was used to spending throughout the year. So that was definitely a weird transition to me. But my husband was, of course, very supportive, and I knew that the job that I had lined up, it was worth waiting for. So he was very supportive in that transition period, and he pushed me to get a new job that I would start immediately. We both knew that this would be a career move that would be worth it in the end.
And Steph, what was it like for you to,
Well,
and I know, like you had also mentioned during our pre-interview, that when you would be traveling and all these, around the globe, literally for your work, Jeanette would often come meet you though, and you would have experiences and explore together. And now your life was really different, and the fear factor was a huge thing too, and having a child as well. So what was that like for you, adjusting to all that?
absolutely. When our son was born, knowing what my job entails of and a lot of travel and everything, I started, second guessing if I'm in the right, position. I wanted to be here for him, to watch him grow, and watch his milestones as well. And I was, I wished I wouldn't travel anymore. And I guess, what they say, be careful what you wish for, right?
Absolutely.
My wishes came true. I was able to, to stay home and work from home the past 6 months and watch him grow. And, I loved every moment of it. It was great. And actually it led me to, apply for another position within my company that involves no travel, because I didn't want to, going forward, I didn't want to miss any of these moments. I enjoyed being here with Janan and watching our boy grow and helping her out. And, this is the life that I wanted. So, and in a way, COVID was kind of like a blessing in disguise, if you will.
You had mentioned that marriage isn't 50-50, but 100-100. So how did that manifest during these 6 months together?
Absolutely. I mean, we just had to be all hands on deck, it wasn't like you do this, I do that. We had to kind of, do everything together. If one of us is on a phone call, we still had a baby. We kind of were a little bit worried, with childcare. You don't know what people do when they're not here. Are they going out? Are they having gatherings? And we weren't comfortable bringing somebody to watch him. So it had to be, all done by both of us at the same time.
Yeah, we were both full-time working parents, full-time stay-at-home mom, full-time stay-at-home dad.
And also, all of a sudden, you're living in a new house as well.
Yeah, new home, new neighborhood. We keep a joint chalkboard calendar in our kitchen that we record all of our phone calls throughout the day so that we know who's busy at what time. And if somebody is on an important call, the other one is stepping in and hanging out with our son or walking the dog to make sure that like everything is being taken care of. So it's absolutely, I mean, even before COVID, it was like this, but it's absolutely, each person has to give 100% all the time. And if one person can't give 100%, your partner has to be willing to put in a little extra that day, so that you can kind of get your feet back under you. And then, it all balances out.
Absolutely.
So what have you learned about each other in these last 6 months of being marooned together?
You mean besides like our favorite color and all that stuff?
Yeah, sort of.
Just kidding. No, I mean, it's, I mentioned this to you before. It was like we've been married for 3 years, but it felt like we've been married for maybe 10. In a good way. You learn a lot about each other, stuff that God knows if we were working, if these things or instances what might have came up and we would have learned these things about each other. But we definitely had to learn about each other's patience and testing that for sure. We had to learn how to be better communicators with one another. I know it's cliche. They say communications is a key to a successful relationship, but this really puts it to test. You're spending 24 hours with someone, so you need to kind of be very transparent and just be able to communicate with one another.
Yeah, you learn about each other's work personalities as well, which is something that you aren't privy to in normal times. You have whatever 8 to 12 hours a day, or you're apart, and everybody has different personalities at work than they do at home. And I learned that my husband is a jokester, and he's quirky at work and likes to talk and joke around, and he can still get his work done. And I'm not like that at all. I'm very serious, head down into the computer. I can't talk when I'm writing an email. And so out of that, our offices were born. Mine is in the guest room. My husband's is downstairs. We can no longer work at the dining room table together. But yeah, I mean, it's a learning experience for everyone. And again, you make the best out of every situation. We do our best to stay in our respective offices, but we still have lunch together. We still sign off and make dinner together and get our son ready for bed together. So it's just learning a new schedule.
So yeah, I mean, taking something that could be just the worst experience and saying, wait, what can we make from this? It's not ideal. We don't want to be here, but we are here and we're committed. And I think that's a major key. We're committed to making this work and writing stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely. And we both understand that this is, it's unusual. It's an unusual time, but it's been a very terrible time for a lot of people. And we've been grateful that we, still have jobs, that we have a roof over our head, that we can feed our family every day, that everybody is healthy. And so we're really blessed to not, knock on wood, having to experience any of the traumas that come with COVID that a lot of people are experiencing across the world. And so when you kind of put things into perspective, you realize that you can really make anything work if you've chosen the right partner. And you have you have your health, you have your home, you're financially stable. Everything else is just, might be a little bit of a pain in the butt, but you figure it out, you make it work.
And I think also, and if you've chosen the right couple, but if the right partner, but if you are the right partner as well.
Yes. Yeah.
That would go back to the 100-100.
Yeah,
So you guys stay put with your beautiful toddler racing around there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring on our next
2 books
couple.
already. So.
Elena, 41, and Kristen, 35. And they live in Arizona. They met in 2017 as members of a fly fishing club. At the time, Elena was married with 4 children. She still has the 4 children, but she met Kristen and there went the marriage. Kristen was also straight, but the 2 of them just knew that they had to be together no matter what. In June 2019, they bought a house and moved in together with Elena's children. This was the first time that Kristen had ever lived with a partner. Then came the virus in March. Elena made her living as a professional speaker. All of her events were canceled. Kristen worked in a corporate setting and now she had to be at home. So she was not just an Instamom, but also the primary breadwinner. Elena recently began a nonprofit called prideandjoyfoundation.com. So welcome. Thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Sherry.
So the two of you had so many major factors to adjust to before COVID. And then with the advent of the virus, there's financial stresses, there's, Kristen co-parenting for children who are suddenly doing online school. So what was that all like for you, adjusting to our new normal?
I think overwhelming might be an understatement. It was just one thing after another. But I'm honestly, to kind of quote Janan and Safe, it's 100. We had to really come to the table and figure out what our strengths and weaknesses were in those new scenarios for us, right? Like Elena is master mom, and I had no clue how to do half that. But in my corporate setting, I was doing training, albeit adults, but I'm training people how to learn. So I was able to kind of seamlessly work my way in and help the kids doing their online schooling. So I'm glad I had that one thing to my credit.
Well, I know that the two of you also have anxiety issues. So, and being in
doesn't?
but being in a COVID hotspot, I mean, literally Arizona, but also, virus-wise, exasperated the anxiety. And so how do the two of you, who each have your own triggers and ways of dealing with anxiety, and that's just tossed into the rest of the messy pot there. How it's handling all that been for you?
That's been interesting. It's been very good, though. We're both really aware of mental health for each other, for ourselves, and for the kids. And I think that was probably one of our biggest struggles. We have a 12-year-old girl, and I could just put a period there because I think that is anxiety inducing in and of itself. But she really struggled. She's the kind of kid that really needs to be out with her friends, and the uncertainty of everything was so hard on her. And so it was almost good for us to have, there was no way we were going to ignore her struggle. You know how easy it is to ignore your own struggle. But when you have a 12-year-old there mirroring back to you the anxiety that you're already feeling, then it was a really great prompt to not only help her deal with her anxiety, but also make sure that we were being cognizant of our own and making sure we were just going through those self-care things that we needed. I mean, it was during COVID that I really nailed down my meditation time. It now happens every day.
Right. And what have been some of the frustrations that you've had with each other?
I don't know that I can't think of anything specific. I do know that we both need our alone time. And I don't think I didn't realize that prior to the virus, that I needed as much time as I did. And so luckily the sport that we both love is a very socially distanced activity. And so it's okay for one of us to say, I need to go away for a day and go fish, and I need you to take care of things. And that was okay because it was something we both knew that we needed.
Yeah, I think we've been really good. Like we've talked about communication, being so paramount, but that we were able to, kind of what we learned is how to communicate when we do need help, and, be able to tag in and tag out. Like she said, if one of us needs to step away for a bit, whether that be fishing or just go up and read or something, just a moment of peace, the other one just knows that we got to hop right in, and the same out, if you will, is available to them as well. Yeah.
And what are some of the things that you have learned about communicating? Because I know, like you said, that when you're anxious, you can't find your words. And so what do you, I mean, definitely taking some time apart, but how else? Because it's a very, when you have anxiety, it's a really, as you know, as we all know, it can be really scary, really terrifying, really anger provoking, because you just want to take it out on someone in some ways, just to discharge some energy. So how do you do it? What do you do?
Yeah, so I think part of that for me, I'm the one that really struggles to find words. And luckily, Kristen is really good at knowing my tells. She's really good at knowing when I'm struggling. And so I've learned a non-negotiable for me is that I have to journal every day. I have to put words down on paper. They come out a lot easier for me that way. And sometimes that's all I need. But other times, if I need to voice something to her by journaling first, I'm able to get the words that are the most accurate to how I'm feeling. And then I have a lot more confidence in bringing something to her attention. So I think that was, for me, something that really helped. But we also, because we have a common understanding with that, we're able to look at each other and say, I know this isn't you right now.
Mm.
Your behavior, your words right now is not really representative of who you are. And that way we're able to kind of give each other grace.
Yeah, I feel like most, if any or all, the frustrations that we were running up against were not issues with each other.
No.
They were all just product of circumstance, right? Like we talked that it's Arizona, it's 110 on a good day. So social distancing is really hard. We can't get out of the house to just physically be outside because, you know, it will melt. And then, you know, we can't go to the grocery store as often because it's so hot and there's just so many people. So yeah, I think we just get frustrated with we want to go out and do something tonight, and we're like, no, we can't. So I think there's more to that than, like I said, I don't have any issues with her specifically, and I hope she doesn't with me. But yeah, just the way the days seem to turn is what really I think is more anxiety and aggravating inducing than anything.
Right. And the uncertainty with COVID, we don't know when we don't have an end date.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And I would say probably one of our biggest struggles is the fact that we're co-parenting the 4 kids with another household. And so there's a huge, I'll use the word again, anxiety factor of having no idea who they're being exposed to 50% of the time.
Yeah.
And then knowing that they're going to come back into our home and then 4 days later leave again. So it can get, that got really hairy. There were quite a few times that I could not handle the stress of not being able to protect my own children 24 hours a day.
Oh.
And that was a good learning experience for me to learn that I can only control what I can control, and I've got to let go of the rest.
So
Yeah.
how have you come around to being better able to do that, to let go, especially again when you're worrying about the health of your children?
Yeah, I think there's just a new standard of trusting. You know, we try to educate them as much as possible about what the risks are, and then they've got to make some of their own choices. I mean, our oldest went off to college 2 weeks ago. He's living
Wow.
in a college dorm. So talk about risk factor for on like all these other levels, right? So yeah, at some point you've got to loosen the grip or you're going to go insane.
And how do the two of you find opportunity to be a couple in a crowded household with all these stressors going on?
I mean, I think that's potentially one of the benefits of kind of having co-parenting with another household. I mean, we love the children, but we do only have to see them 50% of the time. So when they're gone, we usually try and make a point to have a date night. You know, date nights are pretty lame here right now just because we can't go anywhere. So it might be we make each other a nice dinner. You know, we really get in the kitchen together. We would pick a movie together. And then,
We went swimming.
yeah, we would. So that's the one thing. Yeah, Arizona, we can swim. Yay! So yeah, we've gone swimming. We try and stay active in the mornings. We get out for walks and all that fun stuff when it's cool enough.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. It is probably one of the more difficult parts because with having that split parenting schedule, it's always sort of like you're planning for those next 5 days because you have to have stuff ready when they're there that you are no longer in the present. And I will say I struggle with that a lot. So I've been trying to work on that to be more present when we're actually alone together. So.
And I think that when we had done our pre-interview, you also talked about, more on the communication, I guess, and learning more like the love language of your partner.
Yeah.
And yeah. So how has that been, really having that opportunity to learn more about what your partner really needs?
Yeah. So when you're scrolling Instagram all day, you get really inspired to take all these quizzes. And one thing that became really apparent to me was that I kept treating Kristen, I kept trying to show love in a specific way. I would hop on Instagram or Amazon and just buy stuff and more stuff and more stuff. And I think I was kind of addicted to the packages arriving at the doorstep. Like it broke up the monotony of the day. But then it became really clear that Kristen did not feel loved that way. That was not how she felt valued or loved. And so then when it was easier to realize, to let go of that idea, I was then able to embrace the idea of what she really needed was someone to have her back and to clean the kitchen after she has cooked an amazing dinner for everyone, and to just notice the little things that needed to be done. It's funny because I was a housewife for 18 years and that's what I would have wanted. But for some reason I had forgotten.
So I think it's all about when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, and instead of being defensive, you can really listen to your partner, because you don't take it as as an indictment on you.
Absolutely. Yes. I think that's a huge part of it. And that's a huge part of how we try to practice like self-awareness, is that we realize it's almost never about me, right? However we might be communicating or what she might be saying, it's almost never about me. It's almost always about a struggle she's having internally. And so my job is not to be defensive. My job is to listen authentically and connect and support, instead of figuring out what my defensive argument's going to be.
So what has surprised each of you about your partner since COVID has brought on all these added pressures? And again, you're pretty much always together. What have you what have you learned that you didn't really know?
I would say I always knew that Kristen was someone who figured out worst case scenarios, but in this case, she kind of went above and beyond. But I think that it really fed into our sense of safety. Like we knew that Kristen was watching if there was going to be a meat shortage in our area, if there was going to be a toilet paper shortage in our area. Like she really planned. She even got a freezer for the garage and made sure it was full of meat. Of course, then a child left the door open and the entire freezer thawed out. But yeah, but she's been incredibly good about forecasting and planning. And I think that gives a sense of safety and stability to the rest of us. Have you learned anything?
So in a former life, we still do it. Elena is a professional photographer as well. And I've been able to see her level of creativity, in a photographic sense, but with the creation of the Pride and Joy Foundation, it's been really profound to see her blossom as a small business owner, really getting out there and not only running a business, but being able to help people at the same time. And I think that's just extraordinary, and I love to watch it every day.
And that's lovely because you're rooting each other on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're each other's best teammate, right? Best cheerleader. I
And
mean, we try to be.
and being able to do that for one another in this circumstance, and you're still pretty much a new couple and new lifestyles. I mean, everything is pretty much still all new for you.
Yeah.
But it's yes. So that's with all the challenges that you guys have in so many ways. It's wonderful that you keep that connection, and then you look at your partner and you root for them, for their individual achievements and outward steps. Maybe not out of the house because they can't.
Gotta rein her back in. Get in here.
Get in! Get in! Don't open the door. So, okay, you guys hang tight, and I'm going to bring on our third couple. So, Christina and Brian, thanks for joining me here today on Sherapy.
Hello.
Hi. And they are 51 and 54 respectively, and they live in New York City. And she's a tour guide, which obviously, so unfortunately means right now she's out of work. So there's kind of a theme here that we're seeing with our couples. Brian is the CFO of a nonprofit, and he's now working remotely. And this couple, their relationship had already undergone trauma because during 9/11, they lived 6 blocks from the towers.
Yes.
And the virus presented a huge new challenge, a health challenge. On their 20th anniversary, this past March, they both became infected with COVID. Christina was hospitalized twice. The doctors told her at one point that she had a 50% chance of dying. She credits Brian with saving her life, and she still has lingering symptoms. And Christina has written a book called Faith in the Face of COVID-19, A Survivor's Tale. So again, I'm glad that you're with me today, both of you. And you came into this crisis with a solid marriage. After all, you are Match.com's oldest still married couple.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what qualities of your relationship allowed you to get to that exalted status?
I like how you put that. Exalted. It's a good word. What do you think, Brian?
Humility, maybe. I don't know. It's just crazy that we met on Match.com when nobody was really meeting on Match.com. Now it's so common, but back then
You were pioneers, yeah.
We were.
Well, and we were almost, afraid to tell our parents and family members and everyone else where we met. So
It was
finally,
scandalous.
we just got over that and just started telling people, and to see the reaction on their faces in the late 90s when we met. It was kind of humorous, and I guess we just got a laugh out of talking about meeting on Match.com. And I don't know. Christina tells me that Match.com says we're the oldest still married couple, so I guess that's true.
We are the oldest that they are aware of. If there was a couple that was older than us, met earlier than us, they haven't made themselves known to Match.com.
And Brian, you mentioned humility. Christina, what's a quality that you feel has helped the two of you stay together really through thick and thin?
We have a common purpose and sense of life calling, and I think that that's important too. That we feel like, but specifically, our faith has given us a higher calling than our individual needs. And since we both feel the same way in that sense, that we feel that it gives us a purpose and that we're stronger and more effective towards that purpose being together than individually. And so I think it gives us kind of like a, not a purpose and a meaning, but also kind of just a goal to keep in mind whenever we make individual decisions, and just to know that
we are making this for a bigger picture.
So there's that underlying sense of that the two of you are bound together and helping each other and feeling that sense of faith and commitment again. So yeah. And Christina, well, you both got COVID really early on when people thought that it was a China only problem. And I know that you guys were in Tampa at the time, and the hospital told you to go home. So what was it like? I mean, nobody really knew what COVID was, how to deal with it. Everybody were scared of it. So what was it like being so sick, totally reliant on Brian? You said that there was one night in particular when you felt like the virus was trying to kill you.
Yes. It was frightening because there was so little known about it. And here I go to the hospital. I don't get sick very often. The last time I was in the hospital was when I was 12 years old and had my appendix taken out. So if I'm 50 or 51 in a few weeks, it's been a long time since I've been in the hospital. So I took for granted that I go to a hospital, they're going to make me better. So I get to the hospital and realize, well, they really don't know what's going on, what to do, or how to treat it. And so that reality was frightening. I felt like I had a better chance if I had a ruptured appendix or something else that was very dire than having this life-threatening disease. And that was definitely scary. And so I stayed overnight, and I felt like they kind of patched me up and put some Band-Aids here and there. And then the next day said, okay, we've gotten you stabilized. It's time for you to go home. And I was like, home? Basically you told me I had a 50% chance of dying, and I'm going home. That doesn't make sense. It's counterintuitive, and it certainly wasn't anything I was expecting to hear. And they told me that twice. And now that I have some hindsight and some perspective, and time has moved on, I realized that there was a fair amount that they couldn't do with me, but get me to a decent level and go fight it at home so they can have extra beds for people who were far worse than I. But it was, I kind of want to say, hey, no, I want to stay because I'm better off here than at home. And also at home, Brian had his own fight to fight. He had to keep himself well. And so I thought, well, this is a huge burden to lay on my husband, who himself is sick, and I'm robbing him of any kind of fight he would have for himself. And that made me feel terrible and very worried for him.
Well, and this was, you have to remember too, this was late March, and, Florida wasn't a hot spot back then. New York was the hot spot.
Right.
And Florida was, everybody was anticipating this onslaught of people who needed ventilators. And my wife's issues, Christina's issues with COVID were not such, thank God, where she needed a ventilator. So they were like, well, okay, if you don't need a ventilator, we got to get you out the door as soon as you're not dying. And, unfortunately for Christina, that meant that, she would have to come back home. I'd have to get her. I had this routine where I'd put on a mask. We were staying with my brother at the time. I would get in this, he had a second car that nobody but me would use. And I'd have to tell him and the rest of his family, go hide in your room. We're coming down. We're going to the hospital. And then we take Christina to the hospital, and I couldn't even go in with her at the time. It was just like drop her at the door, and they put her in a wheelchair and mask her up and put her in an isolated room where, at that time, even the nurses and doctors were, if she wanted to call someone with the call button, they were scared to death to come in because they didn't know if they would catch it, just coming in.
It was a very elaborate, whenever they would come to check up on me or drop off food or what have you, it was a very elaborate process of going into the room and leaving the room, which I detail in my book because I found it fascinating. I was like, wow, my body is literally a lethal weapon. And what these people have to do to not catch what I have. And it was fascinating how they sanitized, which they did in the room, Then there was an ante room between my room and the lobby and the door leading out to the lobby, where they finished up a sanitizing process. And I was able to watch them because I had like a transparent, it was a window
And that was when you were in the hospital
In the
before
hospital.
they kicked you out, pretty much, because they couldn't do anything else for you. Brian, what was it like you weren't doing that great either, and you're watching the most important person in your life struggle for her life?
Yeah, it was really tough. Yeah, it was tough. I mean, I prayed a lot during that time, and you just don't have control. And there are a lot of things in life we don't have control over. But but generally, this is the kind of thing. It's the kind of virus where you can lose your loved one overnight. And I remember reading a story of a young couple in New York where the couple was in their 30s, and the husband was more sick with COVID, and the wife was staying on the couch and the husband in the bedroom, and she came in the next morning and her husband had died. And so I just was thinking of, okay, well, at any point either one of us could die. Fortunately, we didn't. But it was, we were trying to read everything we could. We were trying to study everything we could, but you really just have no control. So it's such a helpless feeling if you're very sick with COVID. Now, I know a lot of people didn't get as sick with COVID, and I didn't get nearly as sick as Christina, but I had the shortness of breath issue, where I was, perhaps more worried about that, even if I didn't feel as bad as she did. I was worried about, okay, am I going to go to sleep tonight and just not wake up tomorrow morning? And that's where, you feel such a loss of control that, as Christina said, you have to rely on each other. We had to rely on our faith and just take each day kind of day by day as best we could.
How did going through that together impact the two of you as a couple, in terms of, oh my God, I could have died, my partner could have died? We take life for granted when we're okay.
Yeah, I think we really do. I think we really do from time to time. It's certainly when things are going well. And this is certainly not a situation where for us things were going well. I mean, we certainly relied on each other. I mean, I'm sure there were times during the whole COVID experience where I wasn't doing something that Christina needed me to do, or she wasn't doing something that I needed her to do. So it's not like this happy, perfect thing where we were relying on each other. We really were there for each other. And, and I can just remember, a couple of times when life got frustrating, we'd have to pick each other up a bit and say, you're going to get through it. And I just remember when I first had the shortness of breath, she thought I was going to go downhill like she was. And she was kind of picking me up. Brian, you got to get through this. You can't let this get you. And I was doing the same with her when she was kind of feeling like, giving, not really giving up, but you could tell mentally sometimes it's fighting this virus can be a mental game as well as a physical game. So trying to be there for each other, trying to pick each other up. And then fortunately being able to kind of look back at that experience now and say, hey, we got through it. I don't know there was anything we really did. God got us through it. And I think that, I think it makes anyone stronger when you can go through the tough times. When life is going really, really well, it's hard to really show what kind of character you can have in a relationship. And when life is not going well and you get through those tough times, I think it really, builds the relationship, if that's helpful.
For me, he really spurred me on to fight, because I think when I was approaching feeling sick, and you're thinking in terms of, okay, what do I need to do to fight? I was thinking in terms of the flu. Okay, so I had a flu about a year and a half ago, and I just laid around, drank a lot, and chilled out and slept. That was my initial approach when I learned I was COVID positive. Lay around, sleep, and it'll go away or dissipate, or that's the way to fight it. And Brian was actually, he had a different approach. He was like, no, I've read somewhere that you need to get up, you need to stretch, you need to bounce in place, you need to walk around the room. You don't need to give the virus a foothold in your body. And I actually did ask around to some healthcare worker friends that I have, is this true? And they were like, yeah, you need to get up and move. And there was a lot of times I didn't feel like moving. I could barely stand. But Brian was like, get up. He'd help me up. He would make me walk around the room. And I actually believe now that rather than like a flu, lying around and letting things take its course and sleeping, that it was an active fight. It was more of a chess match than a lying around with the virus. And it was really, I felt like Brian spurred me on, because you really don't feel like getting up and moving around. You want to lay there. That's everything in your body is wanting you to lay there. But I actually believe one of the things that kept me alive was his take on the virus and what I needed to do. And he made sure I did it. And it was a strategy that I actually think ultimately spared me my life. So he made me fight, in other words.
Brian, what did she make you do?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, I'm naturally not probably a very good caregiver, and just to be honest, and she's like, I need you to be my caregiver. And so, that's, I mean, I think sometimes, it's hard in a marriage, or it's hard in a relationship of any kind for your partner to tell you what they need from you. And so Christina was able to be very direct about that. And then I was able to kind of step up to the plate where maybe I naturally really wouldn't have as much, and kind of be there to do what she needed me to do, whatever it was. Because she was, I would get my mask on, I would go get food, and I would, I would take care of whatever her needs might be. And then I would also, kind of force her to say, hey, you can't just lay in bed all day. So, that it was good for her to be very vocal to me about what she needed. And then that got me to do, what I needed to do.
And one night, didn't you have to kind of throw her into an ice cold bath?
Yes.
Yeah, there was one night where she was not very well off, and I think we had just gotten back from one of the hospital visits, and we kind of knew that she they kicked her out, so we probably couldn't go back there again unless it was really, really bad, and her fever was really bad, so she wanted a cold bath, and she had vomited, gotten sick, and then I'm like cleaning that up, and I'm making the bath, and then I'm trying to make sure she's not going to get sick again, and finding a bucket, and all that kind of sort of graphic
There
stuff.
was one night where he earned his keep. For about 4 hours, we were fighting, literally the virus trying to kill me. I'm convinced now that there was one particular night that the virus had kind of mobilized and said, let's see if we can put this person down under. And it was a fight for my life. And literally, like Brian he was throwing me in the bath, picking me up. I was throwing up all over the walls and the couch and on the floor. And so if he wasn't there to literally like mop me up and throw me in different places, I definitely wouldn't be here today.
Ryan, you really became like a 6-star caregiver. So nobody can ever tell you that you can't do that again, for sure. Well, I mean, I'm glad that the two of you were able to fight together and come up with ways and help each other and just give each other the strength and the fire to carry on and to be here together to tell us about this. So, and I'm going to bring everybody in right now. So what advice do you have, and again, any of you can, for couples who are going through COVID together and facing maybe not your particular challenges, but everybody faces challenges, and many, I'm a couples therapist, and I certainly hear from many people who just can't even look at one another. They're fighting, they have different points of view on, one could be a lot more cavalier about wearing a mask, for instance, or just all of it. So, I mean, just, just whatever comes up for any of you right now, given your various experiences and your commitments to one another, no matter what, to get through this.
I'll jump in with that. I just heard a podcast today where the author Mark Nepo was describing that this is kind of like a worldwide Sabbath. Like it's really requesting, we're forced to take a rest, take a break. And as much as all of us want things to go back to normal, I think this experience has really helped us to realize that there's some things that we don't want to go back to. I don't want Kristen going back to an office in downtown Phoenix. That's an hour commute there and an hour commute back. So there's some things that are not going to be invited back into our lives. And I think that that's another way that we can look at our relationships as well. Like, we can use this to grow stronger and to grow closer and to decide what to get rid of and what to invite in. Or we can just survive this. And then it really didn't do much for us, did it? So for me, it's about being intentional about what are we going to create our post-COVID lives to be.
Yeah, I think to even continue that, I've never been good at setting boundaries, but like she said, it really opened our eyes to things that we don't want in our lives anymore. Because you can be in the office all day and say, man, I wish I could be somewhere else, 100 times, and you never take those steps. But when you're forced home and you see what there really is kind of on the other side, you start to put up those boundaries. Like, you know what? No, I'm not going to answer my work phone after 7, those kinds of things. So, just resetting those boundaries now that you have been able to reevaluate, what is actually important to you.
No, that's great advice. Anybody else have something that they want to share?
Yeah.
The baby does.
Yeah, the baby is.
Right on cue.
I'm so jealous of everybody's quiet backgrounds. Just to piggyback off of what Elena and Kristen said of not wanting to go back to that just chaos of, being in the office until late at night, making it home just in time to say goodnight to the baby. We've realized that we definitely don't want to go back to that lifestyle. And we definitely value our time much more than we did before COVID. But, we've also learned that you have to be, patient with one another. You have to listen to each other. You have to be a little bit intuitive of your partner's needs. And it's also important that you're kind to yourself, because for all of the changes that your partner is experiencing, you're also going, you're going through changes as well. And you're each going through each other's changes with one another. So just learning to be patient with each other and with yourselves, and giving each, you and your partner the credit that you both deserve. These are not normal times. So, it's not going to be a normal, you're not in normal survival mode.
Yeah, and just to add something, you have to always remember that you're a team. It's you against the world, literally, in this situation. You can't let any outside forces come in between you. And in this situation, it's COVID, and the situation it's created around the world. You just have to adjust and learn how to adapt.
That's a great point. When I didn't want to expose family members and friends to our COVID-ness, that left me and Brian. And it was a little bit like me and him against the world in a way. And it just kind of it boiled down to, at the end of the day, just us. Whereas we're both extroverts and we have a lot of friends and we're used to being around a lot of people, it just boiled down to us because of the nature of COVID and how sick we were, and the fact that everybody was quarantining and staying away from each other. And I'm not sure, I've kind of felt that way of like, wow, when it all boils down to me and Brian, because I might have said, well, family and friends and me and Brian, we all kind of fit in together, but it was us. And so it was a different thought pattern, a new realization, and definitely I was very comfortable with it. I just we'd never been to that particular point before, and definitely comforting. That's like, wow, well, if it is just us, I'm with a good person. If that's what it boils down to, when push comes to shove and the situation is as crazy as this one is, but yet it's here, there's no one else I'd rather be here and be in this situation with than him.
No, that all of you have brought up excellent points, and thank you for sharing your stories. And I think an underlying theme here is that we never know what we're going to face, and we never know what's coming at us. But when you are with somebody, to be able to be there for themselves, be there for them and for you with that conviction. And yes, there can be times when you just want to run out the door and rip off your mask and scream, but that this person is really the person who is there for you for the long run, putting up with you. You are putting up with them. You are devoting yourself to them. In your case, Christina and Brian, you really were putting your lives on the line to save each other. And I think every day we want to come and just appreciate. We may not know when COVID is going to end, hopefully sooner versus later. We may not know when we might lose a job. We don't know when we're going to face a health crisis. We don't know when something is going to happen. And we don't know when we're going to piss each other off. Like I know I say to Paul all the time, I don't know how you put up with me, because I really don't. I'm not always such a picnic to him. But there are other times when I just try to show my gratitude for everything that he has done for me, and I try to do things for him. So I think it's about, when you know that you're a team, just keep that glowing inside you, and know that you're a team, and you'll get through it, and you're going to get through it together. So I thank all of you. I wish everybody good health and strength. And, a lot of times having strength means that you're also allowing yourself to have times of being vulnerable and scared, and that's okay. And when you're part of a couple, hopefully you can balance that out, and one person can kind of have a fit and be scared at one time, and the other one can pick them up, and then you can just reverse it. So thank you all for being here with me today, and see you next time on Sherapy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you for having us.